Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by SoundWeb Studios. Visit online at soundwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget? SoundWeb Studios is the answer. SoundWeb Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@soundwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. SonicWeb Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international award-winning author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia. Available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is an illusion and those you love be the first to go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has got great reviews and loved and enjoyed by Hollywood celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Ford Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for those Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, the Mike Wagner Show is brought to you by Picture This Photo Books, where remembering is the key ingredient. How beautifully your mother looked at a wedding, and even more so at yours. And who doesn't miss grandma's meatballs, huh? Well, the holidays are coming, and what's a better time to give a gift for remembrance that makes you laugh and cry at the same time? Whatever gift for grandma's recipes or just because those smiles and tears will just melt your heart. Call Karen Shaw. Picture This Photo Books at 646-798-0809. That's 646-798-0809. Or visit picturethisphotoBooks.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Picture This Photo Books. Bring your memories back to life. The whimsical, casual, or formal, and always uniquely you. And don't forget to check out the Mike Wagner Show on over 30 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter today, and check out the Mike Wagner Show merchandise at themikewagnershow.com. Also on Amazon at the Mike Wagner Show podcast, t-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, a lot of goodies and more. Also check out the Mia Molson-Zia store on Amazon for great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles, and great merchandise, t-shirts, pop sockets, hoodies, you name it, he's got it. Go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia and make sure you check out all this great stuff. And also, you can also donate generously to the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. Also on Anchor FM/support and PayPal. And make sure you do so today. We're here with a terrific author who began a writing career with a debut novel, A Cobbler's Tale, in 18. And he is a well-respected and a prolific historical fiction novelist. He also earned very high praise from Kirkus, Midwest Book Review, Amazon, Goodreads, and more. And the latest novel involves paranormal fiction and centers around the mummified remains discovered by 2 mountain hikers in the fall of 91. We'll talk about this amazing odyssey. Live, ladies and gentlemen, from the beautiful Plus Studios somewhere in New Jersey, the very multi-talented author, Neil Perry Gordon. Neil, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, it's good evening here in New York and New Jersey.
Well, it's good everywhere. I mean, we live 24/7. I mean, as we're listening, may say good evening. They may be having 2 in the morning, having trouble sleeping in Tokyo. So maybe a great book like yours will put them to sleep. So
let's hope it doesn't put them to sleep.
Well, some could use a good story as well, too. And speaking of stories, you began your writing career with the debut novel, A Cobbler's Tale, back in 18. You're a well-respected and prolific historical fiction novelist. You earned very high praise from Kirkus, Midwest Book Review, Amazon, Goodreads, and more. And your latest novel is a paranormal fiction that centers around the mummified remains discovered by 2 mountain hikers in the fall of 91. And we'll talk about your book, Otzi's Odyssey, the troubled soul of a Neolithic Iceman. And before getting to all that, along with your other books, A Cobbler's Tale, Moonflower, The Righteous One, and more, tell us how you first got started, Neil.
Well, I was wanting to always to be a writer. So I told my great-grandparents' story in my first book. I embellished it, made them much more courageous than they really were, though I never really knew them. So but, it still was a good story. I just embellished it, and that was my first shot. I wanted to see if I actually had an ability of being a storyteller, being a novelist, and it went well. It got a lot of excellent reviews. And the first one, of course, was when I sent it off to my editor, and I was crossing my fingers that when it came back, because she was really the first person of any caliber to read it, and she says, "Yeah, you're a writer." So that was it. That's how it began.
Wow, it's amazing. And what was that one precise moment that simply said to you, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life?
That was the moment, because it was that I was waiting for her to say it's good or it's not good. And I really was focused on that moment and saying, okay, this is one of those times when, it's going to give you a direction in your life. So I think by her praise for it, the very, very beginning was what I needed. And then the next big moment was getting my first public review.
Mm-hmm.
So once the book was out, and then I had to wait for my review from the public, from someone I didn't know. And then those started rolling in. And then, first, not everyone was 5 stars, but, out of 100 reviews I have now, about 80% are 5 stars. So I got a good following.
Wow, that is amazing. And who are some of your favorite writers and authors growing up?
Oh, of course, Stephen King is everybody's favorite. John Irving, I love Steinbeck. There's hundreds and hundreds. I like good storytellers. I like people who make you think. I like people who grab you into a story and you're so excited to be there and sad to see it end. So I write with that in mind, because I want people to be excited when they read. I want them to be entertained. I want them to learn something, be surprised, as I am when I read my favorite types of books.
That's rather interesting. What's your favorite Stephen King novel?
Well, it has to be The Stand, I think. I read that when it first came out. We were in college. I remember we were sitting in the dorm room. I went to Pace University down in New York City. My room overlooked the Brooklyn Bridge. And all the guys on the floor read The Stand. We passed it around. We talked about it. And then one night, we all got the courage to try to give Stephen King a call. So we never actually got through, but I think we talked about it more than, then we tried. It was very anticlimactic, but it was lots of fun thinking what we were going to say to him at that time. And then we thought of him as this amazing writer back in 1980, but back then he was just really starting out. And I listened to his biography. He has a book called On Writing, which is for writers and how he writes his process and a little bit about his history. Mm-hmm. So when he talks about when he wrote The Stand, it was so interesting because he really wasn't as known as we know him now. But us as college students revered him in such a grand way. We thought of him as he is now, but he really wasn't. So that would have been a moment where we probably could have called him, got him on the phone, and had a good conversation.
That's really interesting. And what were you studying at Pace University at that time?
Marketing.
Oh, really? Marketing. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I have a degree in marketing. Yeah.
Okay. And then how'd you manage to segue from marketing over to writing? Say you went to school in 1980 and then you also wrote your book in 18. So, tell us about the timeline between that time and up till 18.
Yeah, it's quite a few years in between. So I've been in the window covering, drapery, and upholstery business, basically almost pushing in my 4th decade. So writing became a second career later in life. I'm still top of my game in my interior design career, but what's nice about writing is something I could do when I retired from my professional business and continue with that. I think that's something I like it a lot. I like the process. I just like the ease of writing, because if you wanted to be creative, you have a couple different choices. You could be a sculptor, you could be a painter, you could be a musician. And I tried painting. Painting was a pain in the neck. You got to clean up. We've done every day. I mean, it was like a massive time to clean up. So in writing, it's easy. You have a computer, a laptop. You got internet to connect to Google for research. It's a wonderful way of being creative, and I like the creative aspect of it because I write for myself, so it's totally free. It's totally a pure creative process. I'm not writing for an audience. Though I have to say that I'm tending to learn how to write to an audience now after I have 7 published books, 2 more on its way. So my new book that I'm writing after Utsi coming out will be the 3rd part of a trilogy. I have the first 2 books out, Hope City and Cape Nome, and my new book will be called Denali, and that'll be a trilogy because from what I hear, people like to read series of books. That helps sell books is when you write them in a series. So this will be my first series. Will be a trilogy, and that'll be out sometime next year.
And what's the name of the series in the first book?
The first book is called Hope City. It's about the gold rush in Alaska in 1898.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go to 1900 to Nome, Alaska, where the next big gold rush moved to, where my next book is at. Actually, the audio book of Cape Nome will be out this fall as well. So all my books are on audio. This one is being recorded on audio now. So it's a very exciting story. You know, back in 1900 in Nome, Alaska, Wyatt Earp was up there.
Huh.
Wyatt Earp and his wife Josephine, they actually were partners in a saloon, a casino called the Dexter. So I weave Wyatt Earp into that story, which is kind of fun, and the whole gold rush in Nome, which was a real interesting time to be there in 1900. And then the third story ends up, and it's called Denali, but it's a little bit more. It's less about the gold and more about the characters at this point. We're so in depth with the characters. So that is still in the process of being created, about 25,000 words in.
Oh, wow. Okay. When can we expect Denali to come out to complete the trilogy?
I'm expecting it sometime at the beginning of next year.
Next year. Okay. So you got Hope City, Cape Nome, and Denali as a trilogy. I am so looking forward to it. And I think I read something about similar where Wyatt Earp and his wife was up in Alaska. And I think they were part of the gold rush, part of the salute and everything. And I think there's a really good story that came out of it. So that sounded really familiar. And I'm looking forward to reading that. And we'll also talk about some of the other works like The Bomb Squad, Cobbler's Tale, Moonflower, and more, along with Uzi's Odyssey. But first, listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international award-winning author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia. Available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is an illusion and those you love be the first to go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews and even often endorsed by Hollywood celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forrest Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, the Mike Wagner Show is brought to you by Picture This Photo Books, where remembering is the key ingredient. How beautiful your mother looked at a wedding, and even more so at yours. Who doesn't miss grandma's meatballs, huh? Well, the holidays are coming. What better time to give a gift for remembrance that might make you laugh and cry at the same time? Whatever gift for grandma's recipes or just because, those smiles and tears, well, those melt your heart. Call Karen Shaw, Picture This Photo Books at 646-798-0809 or visit picturethisphotobooks.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Picture This Photo Books. Bring your memories back to life. The whimsical, casual, or formal, and always uniquely you. And don't forget to check out Mike Wagner Show on 30 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. Check out the Mike Wagner Show merchandise at themikewagnershow.com. Also on Amazon.com at the Mike Wagner Show podcast, t-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, and more. Make sure you order today. And don't forget to check out the Mia Molson-Zia store on Amazon for great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles, and for cool merchandise. Make sure you check out the Mia Molson-Zia store on Amazon. And also support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal at the Mike Wagner Show or Mike Wagner voiceover. And also support us at themikewagnershow.com. Click on donate and make sure you give generously today. We're here with author Neil Perry Gordon here on the Mike Wagner Show. We talked a little bit about Hope City, Cape Nome, and also Denali as completing the trilogy. And before I talk about Uzi's Odyssey, the troubled soul of Neolithic Iceman, you also had some books out there called A Cobbler's Tale, Moonflower, The Righteous One, and more. And well, first of all, let's start with The Bomb Squad, Clash of Patriots, Book 1, and tell us more about that.
Bomb Squad is historical fiction. Takes place in New York City during World War I, actually right before the America gets involved in the war. So the war broke out. We still were neutral. We didn't get involved, but we had a lot of Germans in the New York metropolitan areas, particularly on the Jersey side of the river, and they got stuck here during the war. So war broke out. They a lot of Germans were here. They ended up being stuck in mostly on Jersey City and Hoboken. In fact, there's still a big German population there now. But we had a lot of issues, spies. We had bombings going off. So the U.S. government we didn't have a CIA back then, and our intelligence wasn't as it is today. So the British Secret Service were really the premier intelligence organization in the world. So they sort of established this bomb squad in New York City, and my lead character, plays the lead detective of the bomb squad, and he has to find out what's going on with these bombings going on in the New York, New Jersey area and elsewhere. Meanwhile, so he's the protagonist. The antagonist is also a German national, but American, but he's loyal to Germany, and he's a spy. So there's two men, both were born in Germany, but both are American. One's patriotic to the American cause, one's patriotic to the German cause, and that's where the excitement takes place.
That's really interesting as well, too, and it also talks about having the guy Schwartz as well, too, hell bent to strike the Americans from entering the war and everything else, and also you had a Cobbler's Tale, which is also Jewish immigrants' story of survival, Eastern Europe, New York's Lower East Side, and tell us a bit about that one.
That's the first book, called The Cobbler's Tale. It takes place also before World War I breaks out, but it's about this Jewish family living in southern Poland, which was called Galicia at the time, part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. The father decides he wants to immigrate to America. And very typical of that time, the men would go first, try to establish a good connection there, get a job, get a place to live, make sort of relationships, and then bring the family over. So that's what my main character did, Pincus. Pincus decided to come over and left his wife, who was pregnant at the time, and 3 children back in Poland. And while he's here as a cobbler trying to get himself established, war breaks out in Europe, and he was supposed to go back within a year to get them, but it's now too late. They're stuck right in the middle of a war zone, a very bloody war zone between the Russians and the Germans and the Austrians. It becomes an adventure story. He goes back and he tries to save them during war. And meantime, here in the Lower East Side of New York, at that time, gets himself involved with the wrong people, with some gangsters, and he has some unfortunate circumstances. I also have their son, Moshe, is what's called a tzaddik, and he is only 36th tzaddik on the earth at any one time. So he has this mystical ability of making people feel at ease when he meets them, especially at their time of just as about to die. So he has this magical ability. They call it a hand of God. So I have this metaphysical element to it as well, and it's historical fiction of where it takes place, and you can learn about what life was like in the Lower East Side at that time, as well as an adventure story of a family looking out for each other.
That's really interesting as well, too. And so far, you had a tale of Jewish immigrants, Eastern Europe, New York's Lower East Side, and also in New York City as well, too, with the Germans. And you've got some really good, interesting. Let's talk about Moonflower as well, too, a 17th century tale of a young man's search for the Great Spirit. And tell us about that. This seems to be a nice break from the 2 books you talked about.
Well, Moonflower is also historical fiction, though it takes place in the late 17th century, right after the English take over from the Dutch. So my story is about a 17-year-old boy, a Dutch boy who ends up living with the Indians in upstate New York. And him and his friend, who's the chief's son, the same age, they go on their quest, the rite of passage quest. And he takes the Moonflower. And the Moonflower is a plant, a hallucinogenic plant that the shaman gives. And then if you take the Moonflower, you forget everything you ever knew up to that point. You basically wash your memory clear. So before he takes it, the shaman says, what I want you to do is I want you to write everything you remember about your life down. He gives him a parchment and a quill. And he says, just write down your biography, because you're going to forget everything that you know up to this point. So this is the part of the rite of passage. So he takes the moonflower, he forgets everything, but he has this document. It's just basically words. He has no emotional connection to this document. And then he goes on this quest, this epic quest that takes him across New England. It takes him to Amsterdam, down to the slave coast of Africa, across to the slave mart in Charleston, South Carolina, up through Philadelphia during the time of William Penn, and then back again. And it's this, you know, the whole journey is a rite of passage. It's the story about this young boy. And again, it's mixing historical fiction, it's mixing adventure story, as well. I even have a monster in it, which is more of a symbolic type of a monster that he encounters as part of his quest.
And what type of monster is that?
It's called a Wendigo.
Wendigo.
Yeah. So if you read the book, I give a nice description of what the Wendigo looks like. But he's a very tall, elongated, horrible looking figure that basically represents evil throughout the story. So again, it's a good versus evil type adventure story. And that was my second book that I wrote.
That's interesting too. And getting back to the Cobbler's Journey as well too, you've got The Righteous One, A Cobbler's Journey into the Dream World and Beyond, book 2. And this seems to continue in the New York region. And tell us a bit more about that and the continuation of A Cobbler's Journey.
Right. So Cobbler's Tale is the first book, and The Righteous One was my third book, and it's a continuation of A Cobbler's Tale. It takes place now. My character, who was in the first book, Moshe, who was the tzaddik, he was only 10, 11 years old in the first book. Now he's 60 years old.
Wow.
And so now we see him living in the Bronx. He owns a cobbler shop. He's taken over after his father, and his grandfather before him were all cobblers. So he's taken over. He has a nice little cobbler shop in the Bronx. And he has this power, and people know about it because there's only 36 tzaddik in the world, and they know that there was one in New York because he had this famous encounter when he was a young boy. And so he's sought out because he has to fight the evil character that is the opposite of the tzaddik, which is called the Rasha. So, you know, everything in life has balance. So we have good and evil. We have the tzaddik, we have the Rasha. So the Rasha is causing havoc and evil throughout the Bronx. And so he is brought to fight the Rasha. So he's sort of the reluctant hero in the story. And actually got a lot of good reviews. It's not historical fiction. It's really what I call metaphysical fiction. Sort of what Utzi's Odyssey is as well, metaphysical fiction. I know you mentioned it's paranormal, but I think metaphysical is a better description of the genre. So I like that, you know, talking about the unknown in my stories. I try to bring that in as much as I can because it's an opportunity to be creative. It's an opportunity to allow the reader's mind to take a journey with you. And as long as you make it plausible, if you make the reader think, yeah, okay, I can buy this, even though it's way out there, then you're telling a good tale.
It sounds like those are really good tales as well, too, Neil. And before we talk about Sadie's Sin, how'd you first get involved? What got you interested in the metaphysical and the paranormal?
Well, I like the metaphysical. I've always liked the metaphysical area more so. You know, the paranormal not so much, but the metaphysical, yes. I like making myself look into the unknown. I like it because I think writing for me is my spiritual practice. And as a spiritual practice, you want to be able to, you know, pierce the veil between what we see and the rest of the spiritual world. And writing is a good way of doing that because, you know, people today are so cocooned in our materialism and, you know, and the world, the cities that we live in and the worlds that we live in, that we're not open like the indigenous people were open many years ago because they were one with nature. We've disconnected ourselves so much. And so that urge to reconnect with nature, to rewild ourselves, and what that gives you is not just, you know, a physically healthy body, and a mentally healthy body, but also spiritually healthy. So you make that connection, you could break through those veils. Life our stories do not end when we die.
Mm.
I like that idea that our biographies continue. Say, why should that be the end? There's still stories to tell. So I'm really interested in what those stories are. So that's what keeps me interested in the metaphysical.
And of course, you talk about as well too, having the metaphysical and the paranormal interwoven into history as well too, like with New York, and also with the Germans, being stuck in New York, World War I, and also with the Cobbler, Jewish immigrants, New York's Lower East Side, and of course the Moonflower with the Dutch and everything. And how'd you first get interested in history, and how'd you discover about with the or fascinating about the New Yorkers, or with German people being in New York, and also the Jewish and everything. It's like the stories behind it and what got you interested.
Well, I'm Jewish. My grandparents, all my grandparents are Jewish immigrants. But they were all children when they came here. It's the great grandparents that have the real story. I mean, those are the ones who decided we're going to pick up and we're going to leave everything we have and everything we know, and we're going to go move to America. A lot of people did it. I mean, it's millions and millions of people did it at the same time. What I like about historical fiction, I've always liked about it, is it's a way to learn something about history, and not knowing you're learning something because it's fun. So I like that idea. I like the idea that I can read a book and be entertained and learn something about history. So that is very appealing to me as a reader, and as a writer. I do the same, because now that I'm writing about it, I'm learning about it too. So I didn't know there were Germans in New Jersey during World War I until I started writing my book, and then I started doing research and going, oh, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? And because I don't write with an outline, I write with an idea. I write with a concept. I write with a premise, and have sort of an idea where I want it to go, but that's all I know. So I write, and the writing just sort of brings me to different places. It surprises me. And 80% of what's written when I'm done, I had no idea would have been there when I started. Maybe even more than 80%. If I had to put a number on it, probably be over 90%.
Wow.
So that to me, I like in that process, because I think if I'm surprised at the story as I'm telling it, the reader will be surprised.
And of course, what's surprising as well too, you also have Sadie Sin, the Zui McDowell's Reign of Terror. It's about a woman named Sadie. She's a Jewish in 1924 in Poland, fall in love with a handsome professor, and of course, there's also with trafficking going on with the women, and an epic tale and everything else. And tell us more about that. That seems like a nice different change of pace from your previous books.
Well, it is a change of pace. It is a historical fiction. A lot of people don't know about this, but in the 1920s, between mid 1920s and mid 1930s, in Buenos Aires, Argentina, there was sex trafficking going on. There were brothels, hundreds and hundreds of brothels throughout Buenos Aires, with sex slaves. They had women sex slaves working there, and these were Jewish men who ran these things. And wow. they got women from Poland, from poor Jewish girls from Poland, going there, acting as agents, saying, we have rich husbands in Argentina who are rich Jewish husbands in Argentina looking for young girls to marry them. And you give up your daughter, we'll take her, she'll live the life of a princess. And so a lot of these families, were very poor, and thought, okay, give our daughter a chance. Meanwhile, they were signing them away and giving them up, and they ended up on boats, going across, steamships going to Buenos Aires, and becoming sex slaves, and they could never leave. So my story is based on that premise. So I have my Jewish girl in Warsaw, Poland, college age, and she falls in love with the college professor, and he's not Jewish. So the father's like, there's no way you're marrying this man. This is not happening. And she is, beside herself, of course. So he decides, after, being very frustrated, to sell her to this Argentinian businessman, and they don't know what they just sold her into, and off she goes. And if this is an adventure story, so of course my college professor, has to go and rescue Sadie from these brothels, and that's Sadie's Sin.
Hmm. And how do you think the sex trafficking situation in Argentina compares to today?
Well, there's been comparisons. So when I was researching the sex trafficking there, they were bringing up the Jeffrey Epstein character, him, and his that woman who's associated with, because they were also doing sex trafficking as well. Different setup. Both men are. He was Jewish too, Jeffrey Epstein. It was a horrible thing, and that the Jews could do it to Jews. That was disgusting. That could go on. This is a horrible thing, and that's one thing in history a lot of people don't know about. When I mention this story or they read it, they said it's a time in history no one really has been aware of.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is something. And of course, that's been going on throughout the news as well, too. And do you think our current system is fighting sex trafficking right now, or are they just simply letting it go? Do you think it's neutralizing, or you think it's getting worse?
No. It's definitely getting well. Listen, I'm sure in some third world countries where things are backwards. You look at what's going on in Afghanistan with the Taliban. I mean, women have no rights there. They're treated terribly. So, it's all about the abuse of women. Be it sexually orientated or just totally power. It goes on. I think we're much less tolerant now in this country than we ever been in the past. So that's a good thing. And we don't allow as much as used to go on. I mean, you can look at, what would happen in the 60s and, with how men treated women, and by looking at shows like Mad Men, and you shake your head going, how do people allow that? So things have changed, but, it's good to bring these things up of what things, in terms of history and show what was really going on.
And make people aware too. And that's a fantastic. You've done a great job of doing that, Neil. And where can we find all your books at?
Amazon.com. You go to Amazon.com, just type in Neil Perry Gordon, and you'll see my library of books there. And you can get them. Also, what's good, Mike, you could get them as an ebook, you can get them as a paperback, and they're all on audio. So if you like to listen to your books, books on tape type thing, all my books are on Audible, and my newest Audible book is Cape Num. That's being recorded now and will be out probably end of this year.
We're certainly looking forward to that, but we're going to be talking about Ötzi's Odyssey, the troubled soul of a Neolithic Iceman, in just a minute. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios. Visit online at SoundCloudStudios.com for all your needs. Also brought to you by our official sponsor, the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson Zia Missing, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Also brought to you by Picture This Photo Books, remembering is a key ingredient. Call Karen Shaw at 646-798-0809 or visit picturethisphotobooks.com. We'll be back with author Neil Perry Gordon of Ötzi's Odyssey after this time out. We're back with the multi-talented author Neil Perry Gordon on the Mike Wagner Show. We talked about A Cobbler's Tale, Moonflower, The Righteous One, The Bomb Squad, and a lot more. And we covered the gamut on a lot of books that are tying metaphysical, paranormal, and a lot of history that's involved. And I've learned a great deal. And let's talk about your latest one. You're featuring Ötzi's Odyssey, The Troubled Soul of a Neolithic Iceman. And this took place in the fall of '91. And tell us more about that.
Well, his corpse was found in the fall of 1991. Ötzi the Iceman is probably one of the most famous natural mummies ever discovered. So, two German hikers in 1991 in the Italian Alps, right just south of the Swiss border, came across this frozen corpse in the glacier, and it ended up being a 5,000-year-old mummy. He was discovered, and they found not only the mummy, but they were able to find his bow and arrows and hair, and his knife, his boots, clothes he wore. Everything was there. It was like this little time capsule inside this glacier. And also they knew what he ate in his stomach. They did tests on him, DNA tests. They found he was 5,000 years old from the Neolithic time. They looked at his fingernails, and they saw how, were able to analyze his fingernails. He had tattoos on his body. So they found the tattoos. They found a arrowhead located in his shoulder. They sort of try to piece back how he was killed up there, how he died. Of course, no one knows. So he is an archaeological specimen of the millionth degree because of what they were able to discover. So to me, that was very interesting. And there has been some stories, some books, and a couple of films here and there of what Utzi's life would have been like 5,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I thought, okay, that's kind of cool to think about what his life was. But I wrote a story about not only the Iceman himself, but also the soul of the Iceman. So we all have souls. Our souls move on after we pass. But Utzi's soul, for some particular reason, was tied to the corpse for 5,000 years and only was awakened when the corpse was discovered. So that's how my book begins. It's from the point of view of the soul, observing the hikers coming to discover the frozen Iceman. So now we have to figure out, as he has to figure out, why am I here? What am I? Who am I? Am I a person, or am I just a thought? So I go back and forth between the modern times of him trying to look at the world, a 5,000-year-old mind or a soul, and the eyes of this soul looking at the modern world. How does he look at a helicopter? How does he describe a helicopter to the reader? How does he describe rooms and lights? And what would a 5,000-year-old man plucked from time put into the modern world, and how to describe these things? How would he do this? So that's what I'm doing as a part of the story. But I'm also I'm going back in time traveling back to his time. I'm telling his story. I'm telling a story how he ended up there, how his soul got frozen along that mountainside. So I go back and forth. I tell back when in 5,000 years ago, he's a leader for Clan. And during my research, I found out that there was these, in this area, these Neolithic people lived on stilt homes in lakes.
Stilt homes.
Yeah, so they built stilt homes on the sides of lakes. So I made my clan live in stilt homes. And this actually, they were able to find, because when the logs that they used to build these stilt homes eventually gave way and sunk to the lake, they're perfectly preserved in the muck because there's no oxygen down there. So they did these dives, archaeological dives, pulled out these pieces of posts and figured out this is from 5,000 years ago. And they recreated this whole idea of stilt homes. So I used that, which was fun. So, there's some historical fiction there going on. And also I go back and forth. So the things that are discovered in modern times, my soul is beginning to recognize these things, and I show how they're used in the ancient times. Wow. And then I have this whole thing where the reason why he ended up his soul being frozen there for 5,000 years, because he ended up selling his soul to the devil. But there's no devil per se in the story, but he sells it to a soul hunter. And part of his quest to redeem himself is that he sold his soul. He must now go to Gehenna, which is hell, and go through the 4 layers of hell to redeem himself. And so that's part of the adventure as he goes down deeper and deeper and deeper through these different realms. I talk about that as part of the adventure story. So yeah, it goes, it weaves in contemporary times to ancient times. It really brings a lot of the idea of the metaphysical world, of the journey of the soul, of looking into the spirit world, of what happens to us after we pass. Yeah, it's a really difficult book to write. My books I could really write quickly mostly, but this book took maybe 4 times as long because I'm writing about things that are very unusual. I'm not writing about, just, historical fiction things, getting on a steamship and coming across the ocean and, having interaction with the pickle man selling pickles on the side street on Grand. This is talking about very, spiritual things. So it's a hard story to tell, but very gratifying.
It is very gratifying indeed, the way you talked about Utzi. And how'd you first get interested in Utzi and starting the journey? How'd you first get interested?
Well, My son was into Utsi. He was from an archaeological point of view. He found it very interesting. So he first introduced him to me. And if you go on and you Google Utsi, Otzi, Utsi the Iceman, you'll come up with a ton of stuff. There's a museum in Tyrol, Italy, where you can go see the mummy and you see all these artifacts they found. My son Max went there right before COVID broke out in February of 19. Wow. So he went up and visited that museum. And there's the mummy. He's there. The mummy they found. You can visit him. He's in this perfectly temperature controlled room. You can look through a little window and see him there. And all his things are there too, the real things, his arrows, the bow he used, his boots, very sophisticated. And what's interesting that I found, Mike, at that time, and you would think that, 5,000 years ago, we were very, very primitive. Mm-hmm. You would think that, we were a caveman, right? But what you learn about in this book and by the life of Utsi was they were much more sophisticated than you realized. I mean, they had boots, they had pants with buttons on the boots to keep the snow from going in. They had certain technology with their bows and arrows and how they made things. Of course, technology was limited, but they used what they had, very clever. So they were smart people, and they lived pretty well, considering. I mean, they had nice lives. I mean, they lived on the side of a lake. They were farmers. They raised livestock. They were hunters and gatherers and foragers. And just like the indigenous people here did, upstate New York, you had, before the English came and destroyed everything, the indigenous people had nice lives. They lived peacefully, and I'm sure there was wars with neighbors, but most ways a lot of tribes never saw battle at all. So a lot of these things, you think of thousands of years ago, like, who could live like that? And almost as idyllic, in a romantic way.
That is very fascinating. I'd love to hear more about Utsi as well. And where can we find Utsi's Odyssey at?
We won't find it yet. It's not going to be out until probably, I'm guessing, late October, early November. But it's my editor now, so we'll be going through the editing process. The book cover is designed. You can see the book cover on my website, neilperrygordon.com. Right on the homepage, you'll see what it looks like. So yes, I got the book cover design. It's a very cool book cover. I'm really pleased with it. And so it'll be sometime the latest November, but you'll find it on Amazon.
We're certainly looking forward to it, and it's been amazing. We're here with author Neil Perry Gordon here on the Mike Wagner Show with The Cobbler's Tale, Moonflower, Righteous One, and more. Neil, a very big thank you for your time. You've been totally terrific, and I learned a lot from you. And just a few more things, besides the things you talked about, this is coming up, that's coming up. What else can we expect from you in 2021 and beyond, Neil?
Well, as I mentioned before, we have the third part of the trilogy, the Goldfield trilogy of Hope City, Cape Nome, and Denali. So that's as far as I can tell you right now, because I'm editing Utsi's Odyssey, I'm writing Denali, and what's next, I'm not sure yet.
We'll be surprised next year as well, too. And who do you consider biggest influence in a career, Neil?
As a writer?
It can be anything in general.
Well, I mean, I've been influenced lately by Jack London, the writer, and actually I talk about him a lot in my books, especially Hope City. He's a character, a small role character, but he's been very influential, very interesting writer, interesting guy, who had an interesting life.
Okay. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Well, best advice is to look within and try to see beyond, the technology that's encompassing us. Try to break through, connect with nature. Connect with nature, rewilding yourself. That to me is the best advice, because I know what happens when we end up locking ourselves off into that other world.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very good point as well, too. Once again, we're with well-respected and prolific historical fiction novelist and author Neil Perry Gordon here on the Mike Widener Show. Neil, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot from you. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. Love you back in 2021 and beyond. Don't forget to keep in touch. Once again, tell us about your upcoming projects. What's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your books?
Two places. You go to Amazon.com, type in Neil Perry Gordon, or go to neilperrygordon.com and you can learn more.
We certainly will do so. Once again, Neil, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely terrific. Learned a lot. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor. Keep us up to date. Love you back in 2021 and beyond. Don't forget to keep in touch. You've been absolutely terrific. And we definitely wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.